Podcast Allo Lebanon is a podcast about the political and economic crisis in Lebanon. I am Vera Obeid, a Slovak married to a Lebanese, living in the country for almost 10 years now, and bringing up two small boys here in Lebanon. The Lebanese political and economic crisis started in October 2019 as a protest against the ruling class. Since then, the country was dragged into a currency crisis with the devaluation of Lebanese pound reaching to 80 to 90%, inflation rate rocketing to 100%, depositors' money being trapped in the banks. We faced the COVID-19 pandemic as everywhere in the world, and everything culminated on the August 4, 2020 at the Beirut explosion, which was a result of years of mismanagement and negligence of the ruling class. The blast is described as one of the most powerful artificial non-nuclear explosion. More than 200 people died, over 7,000 were wounded, and more than 300,000 people were left without their home. The destruction is beyond imagination, specifically the destruction of the historical old sites. And still, it's going to be almost 2 years after the protests started, and still no corrective measures have been met, no reforms have been taken, which brought despair and distrust in the state institutions. Traditionally, Lebanese economy is built on, I would say, two main pillars: services, mainly banking services, and tourism. There is agriculture as well, but that is not being developed sufficiently. Both of these main pillars, banking sector or banking services and tourism, were terribly affected by the crisis. And of course, tourism, when we are talking about tourism, it has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic as well. There is no industry in Lebanon, so the country depends on imports. Central bank reserves are diminishing, so soon Lebanon would not be able to meet its import needs. In our podcast, we focus on the young generation, on the youth, and the impact of this crisis on them. The impact on their decision whether they would stay in the country, how their education is being impacted by the crisis, and how they are basically being pushed out to seek better future. I would borrow the words of one of our podcast guests, who said what he most appreciates about Lebanon is the people, who are very welcoming and warm, the freedom, which is not only religious freedom in Lebanon. We have several religious sects living next to each other, hand in hand, and human potential. So let's hope Lebanon can overcome this crisis and not lose these assets that are considered as most valuable. And I will start this podcast with the words of the Pope John Paul II, who said during his visit to Lebanon in 1997 that Lebanon is more than a country. It is a message to the world. Welcome at today's today's episode of Allo Lebanon, a podcast about the Lebanese political and economic crisis. I am Vera Albayt, and our guest today is Tilda Abou Rizk, the journalist at the Francophone newspaper L'Orient Le Jour. When I came to Lebanon, what really surprised me is the variety of different media and different languages. You have newspapers in English, you have newspapers in French, you have radio shows in all languages. The other day I was driving a car and I was listening to a show in French, then another one in English followed at the same radio station, and all of them they just use Arabic words or sentences. But we will talk about the crisis today. Tilda, can you give us a little bit of a background information, an intro to the Lebanese crisis, or if maybe a geopolitical anchor to what happened in Lebanon?
Yeah, sure, I would love that. First, thank you for thinking about me and for hosting me to your podcast. Okay, I'll try to be very concise and make it as short as possible. Everybody, is talking about 30 years of mismanagement. I think it's mainly the crisis we're in is a crisis of mismanagement, but it's not only that. It's not only the political, system that's responsible of that. We're responsible of it. Why? Okay, because when we had the opportunity to build a state, okay, we missed that. Okay, that was back in in 2005, after the Syrian withdrew from Lebanon. Okay, so because during the Syrian occupation, Lebanon, the whole state was undermined by an appareil that was in place. Okay, what happened is that the Syrian had their tools in the administration, they had their men. This was the start of the collapse of the Lebanese state. Okay, after they withdrew, we had the opportunity to get rid of all that and to start rebuilding a state. This did not happen. Okay, the 14th of March movement, that was the sovereignist movement, who was against the Syrian presence in Lebanon. Okay, missed this chance because all the focus was on the parliamentary election. What happened is that everyone wanted to be to gain his power again, wanted to be in place, wanted to have a role to play in the political scene. Okay, so that was their priority. Whereas the priority was supposed to be to get rid of the Syrian tools in the administration and mainly in the security services. After that, we had assassinations, you remember that, turmoils, lots of problems. Okay, so and that was the first mistake for the 14th of March. The second mistake was agreeing, okay, on compromises, because since 2005 till now, all the political parties, okay, work on the basis of compromises. Okay, when you do compromises, okay, the rule of law starts to be in the second place. Okay, so instead of building a state again, instead, of letting the we call them the control institutions, les organes de contrôle institutions who are in the administration and who make sure that the state works well. Okay, the state wasn't working well. Okay, what was in place was political parties, political men. Okay, who do politics in a way corresponding to what they think is good for Lebanon. So you have since 2005 till now it's 16 years. So it's 16 years of mismanages, of undermining the state. So now the administration is a tool, and the security servers are tools for the political parties. Okay. That's one part of the problem. Second part, which is compromising with Hezbollah. When you have a party that has arms, okay, there's no equality between this party and others. Okay, this party has his way of doing things. He has his agenda, and this also goes against the project of building a state. So all these factors combined, I'm not sure if you're interested in that, because there are some key dates, some key events, okay, that led us here. One of them is the 2008 turmoil. You know, when Hezbollah took his arm against the Courant du Futur, the Future Party of Saad Hariri, because they tried to get rid of his security responsible at the airport. Okay, so it was a turmoil in Beirut, and that led to the Doha Agreement, during Doha Agreement, it was like, ça a été consacré, it was agreed on, okay, that from now on it's going to be a compromised thing in the government. Okay, it wasn't working, it's still not working. They're still talking about compromising, okay, where it doesn't work anymore. And we were under the rule of two principles since 2005 until now, which is whatever suits me suits you, whatever is good to me is good to you, and because I said so. Or you cannot build or run a state based on these two principles. I don't know if this is clear, makes an idea, but because lots happened, okay, but in my opinion, this is the main problem we're in. And the Lebanese are responsible in part of it because they let do.
And what are the interests of that state? Because I believe one of the reasons, another reasons, is the instability of the whole region.
Of course.
And because of all the there is actually no dominant power in the region, but all the wannabe powers having their interests in Lebanon. So how do these wannabe powers influence the situation in Lebanon?
Well, of course there's a regional factor, okay, but it's really easy to put all our problems, to say that all our problems comes from that. Again, we're a lot responsible of it. Because we did let the region and the regional states influence us, plays a role here. You have Hezbollah, who has an Iranian agenda. Some parties are more linked to Syria than to Lebanon. So it's very easy, when you have your tools inside a country, okay, to use that as a way to negotiate, or as a way to put pressure for a reason or another reason.
After the blast on August 4, 2020, the French President Emmanuel Macron visited Lebanon, and he was trying really hard to solve the crisis, to put ultimatums for the government to be created. But now today we can say that he failed. Can you explain why?
I think it's very early to say that it failed, because, as you know, there is now negotiating on the European level to put sanction. Maybe this can lead to something, but why it didn't get a result earlier? Maybe because he gave a second chance to people who know they have always second chances and who are not willing to change. So what he did not okay, he talked to the société civile, to the civil society, right? Okay, but he was asking the political parties to do the change, and he was asking. He was giving them a second chance. They're not going to change. Everybody's saying, okay, خلاص, there will be no more business as usual, but it's the business as usual.
Isn't it a sign of the decline of French power in the region?
There wasn't. Listen,
I know
I'm not sure we can talk about French power in the region, okay? The power in the region we know, it's the American, now the Russian and Iranian mainly.
But still, French had their interests.
Yes, of course, and this is, I think, if we're going to talk about the initiative of Emmanuel Macron, it's because there's a special link between Lebanon and France. Okay, I don't know if there are problems in, I don't know which country, in Israel or in Egypt, or if Emmanuel Macron would have, get involved as much as he did for Lebanon, because there are these special relations between the two countries, historical, cultural relations that are very strong and very anchored in here.
So, what do you think about the future development? What can help the situation? Maybe the new presidency of the President Biden can make a change for Lebanon.
Okay, let's not speculate, okay, and wait to see. What's important is that we do something, and the civil society, okay, has to keep on putting pressure. Okay, things will not change immediately. Things will not change in the near future or even midterm, but eventually they will change if we keep on the pressure, okay, and if we focus on winning small battles in order to start building a state. Because let's not fool ourselves. The arms of Hezbollah, the problem of the arms of Hezbollah is not going to be solved unless, as you say, there's something on the regional level between Iran and the US and Europe.
And my last question would be regarding your job. You are a journalist.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about Lebanese journalism? Is it independent? Did it change somehow after the crisis? What are the main challenges?
The main challenges now are economical, because you probably know that lots of newspapers closed, lots of radio stations, TVs. Okay, journalists were licensed. So yes, the challenges are huge. Okay, as for independency, not all of the media in Lebanon are independent. Okay, it's like a small microcosm of the political scene. Okay, there are media independent, of course. We are an independent media, but you have also our political views. So we're more close to a party than to another because we share the same priorities, objectives. That doesn't mean, okay, that we are financed or that we are controlled by this party. And I can give you an example. When the actual president Michel Aoun was in exile in France, okay, we were with him because of his speech, because he used to, against the Syrian occupation. He was against the arms of the militias, and so we were backing him, and we had lots of trouble because we were backing him. But once he came back, and with his alliance with Hezbollah, now we're against him, okay? Because we still, we did not change, he changed. Because we still, we're still in favor of dismantling of all militias, and we're still backing everything that leads to building real state.
Thank you. Thank you, Tilda, for an interesting anchor that you provided about the Lebanese crisis. You were listening to the podcast Allo Lebanon that was created by Lin and Leah Obeid as well. And the next episode would be with the Red Cross group, talking about their missions during the civil war and about the August 4 blast as well.